Beginning of a week. Most people, the first work day of the week is almost gone. I don't really have a work week per se. I mean, I do work on 7 days a week usually, not all day, but there's always something work-wise I'm doing on pretty well every day of the week. And of course, being a minister, Sunday as well is included. And I was going to continue telling you about science of mind and new thought, a little bit more about Ernest Holmes and how science of mind actually developed. And then all of a sudden, I realized that it's Cinco de Mayo today. Now, in this part of the world, in Southeast Texas, and the ones of you who are here know, Cinco de Mayo is kind of a big deal, the 5th of May. But in Mexico, it's really only celebrated in the state itself. It's only really celebrated in Puebla, which is where an historic battle took place back in, when was it, 1862. And to give you a bit of background, the Mexicans had borrowed money from different European countries, France, Britain, Spain, and I think a couple more. And between them, they sent over a navy, and they were trying to get their money back. And the British and the Spanish and the others gave up on it. But France decided, hey, we can establish something here. So they set up this guy called Napoleon III as emperor. Under Emperor Napoleon III, they decided that they could set up a French-controlled monarchy in Mexico. And actually, on this day, the 5th of May of 1862, 4,000 ill-equipped Mexicans met 6,000 well-equipped French, and they defeated them. Well, as the war went on, the French eventually won, and then the French left. That's another big story. So Mexican Americans here started to celebrate this victory as national pride. And so here, as I said, at least in Texas, as far as I know, it's a big deal. But in Mexico, it's not a big deal. How did I find out about this? Well, I actually found out about it on Friday at our Toastmasters Club when one of our Mexican members, he lives in the States, he's probably a dual citizen now, was born in Mexico, and he told us, and it's kind of like Hanukkah is not Jewish Christmas. It occurs around about the same time as Christmas does, but it's got nothing to do with it in any way, shape, or form Jewish Christmas. It's actually a celebration of the rededication of the temple after the Greeks were kicked out by the Maccabees. The Maccabeans actually got the Jews together and defeated the Greeks who were in charge and kicked them out. And of course, the temple had been desecrated, so they had to rededicate the temple. And when they did, they burned a candle, and the oil in it should have only lasted a short while, but it lasted the whole time that the temple was being rededicated, and it's considered a miracle. And that's what Hanukkah is. Probably I'll repeat it when it comes around to Christmas time again, because it is not Jewish Christmas. And also, as I said, Cinco de Mayo is a big deal here, but it's not such a big deal in Mexico. Doesn't make it any less important in history, but there you are then. So that's what you got today, instead of getting the continuation of the story about New Thought and Science of Mind, which you'll get tomorrow. So I apologize for the delay again, but I thought, hey, it's the 5th of May, it's Cinco de Mayo. Why don't I just give you a bit of background on that? So I went actually on AI ChatGPT, and it confirmed all this stuff that I had actually heard at our Toastmasters meeting on Friday. So the name actually in Spanish is simply describing what happened that day, El Día de la Batalla de Puebla, the day of the Battle of Puebla. So anyway, I thought it's kind of amusing, but it still doesn't stop people being proud of their heritage, right? Hopefully, we're all proud of our heritage, at least the good parts of our heritage. Some parts of our heritage we wish we'd never been involved with, but we're proud of the good parts of our heritage, at least. I hope so. Yeah. Anyway, so here we go with today's reading. And it's an important one. It's called Maintain Spiritual Practices Daily. And this is what Reverend Jesse, my senior minister, is not always, frequently calling us back to. You know, it's the foundation for everything. If you have a spiritual life at all, or if you aim for having a spiritual life, then you need to get involved in maintaining spiritual practices every day. And I do my very best to make that one of the first things I do when I get up in the morning. Usually I go for a walk with our neighbor, I come back, and that is when I, do my spiritual practice. Some days I'm at a meeting really early in the morning. I come back, I do my spiritual practice. So if I don't get it done, then I find sometime later in the day always to do it. So I am practicing what I preach. First quote is from Eckhart Tolle, and Tolle, probably well-known wisdom teacher. And he says, wisdom comes with the ability to be still. Just look and just listen. No more is needed. Wisdom comes with the ability to be still. Just look and just listen. No more is needed. And Ernest Holmes says, we should daily feel a deeper union with life, a greater sense of that indwelling God, indwelling spirit, if you like, the God, the spirit of the seen and of the unseen that is within us. And this goes back to teachings in Christianity, you are the seat of the Holy Spirit, and also to Jesus' teaching, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And then this is our writer this month, and she says, there's a story in the Buddhist faith where a man sitting alone in meditation on a mountaintop finally attains enlightenment. Thrilled, the man hurries to his guru with the news. The guru, unimpressed, then sends the man back down into the city saying, it's easy to be a holy man on the mountain. You got to take this with a grain of salt, because the way I look at this is, if the guy had truly reached enlightenment, he wouldn't need to do this, because his ego is what's sending him back to his guru. And when you reach enlightenment, theoretically, you've overcome your ego. So, but anyway, I may be spoiling the story because there's a moral to it. And she says, isn't that true for many of us? We can pray or meditate in the quiet sanctuary of our spiritual practices, but it's much harder to maintain those trainings in daily interactions with people around us, including, and sometimes even more so, with family members or people with whom we're living in close community, if you like. The people close to us can definitely push our buttons. We may get easily triggered by the things they say or do, with old wounds suddenly resurfacing. In fact, just being triggered tells us that there's something there that needs to be healed. As we gain greater self-awareness of our triggers, those things that produce a strong emotional response, the people who annoy or anger us can become our teachers. We can ask, why does this bother me? Is this situation provoking a hurtful storyline that I still carry from my youth? Is there something here I need to do differently? It's easy to be still, peaceful, and calm on a meditation cushion or in a serene surrounding. But we have to learn how to take our spiritual practices into the world. In that regard, our greatest teachers and our greatest lessons may come from the people whom we find most challenging. She ends by saying, consider that perhaps our spiritual practices of compassion, kindness, forgiveness, and self-care have their roots in the experience we gained during difficult interactions with others. It actually takes me back to that Hawaiian practice where you find yourself in a difficult situation, well, let me give you an example. Several years ago, one of my friends was dying, and the lady who was looking after her, and I and a bunch of other people, including the guy who was looking after her estate, were rounded her house. She actually passed away the next night. But the guy who was looking after this lady's estate really berated the woman who was looking after her. A friend of mine called Christina, who's actually incidentally from Mexico. No, she's not. She's actually from Bolivia. I beg your pardon. She's from Bolivia. And he was really nasty with her. So that night, I went back and I did this Hawaiian spiritual practice where you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. So what you do is you take the situation into your own consciousness, and it's really like spiritual mind treatment. And you work on your own consciousness with that. You bring it into your consciousness and you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you keep repeating it. Well, that night when we came back, and it was late, it was like midnight, because it was one of those occasions. And I repeated this over and over again. And then the next day, I found out that this man had gone to Christina and he just profusely apologized for the way he treated her. And I had nothing to do with it, except I had used this prayer, this Hawaiian prayer, on my own consciousness, and it worked. So that's an example of how we can actually use our consciousness to greater effect. And it's became part of my spiritual practices. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you're working on your own consciousness. And it works. It actually came from a psychiatrist who was working in Hawaii. He's working in a place for the criminally insane. And he would take their files, and each file he would work on every day. And that's what he would do. He would work on each one, and people ended up cured, which is quite amazing. Well, I think that's probably enough for today. Our writer gave us 3 affirmations for the price of 1. The indwelling God within me guides me. The indwelling God within me guides me. In stillness, I practice self-care and kindness toward myself. This is probably one of the best affirmations that you could use. In stillness, I practice self-care and kindness toward myself. It's really difficult for a lot of people to be kind to themselves, especially if you grew up in a faith like I did, where guilt and shame are used as as religious teachings. I extend compassion, kindness, and forgiveness to others. This is probably from the Buddhist idea. I extend compassion, kindness, and forgiveness to others. Jesus, the Buddhists, you name it, they all did it. So tomorrow, I will do the continuation of the Science of Mind story. And until then, say, I practice self-care and kindness toward myself. That should be our mantra, I think, for the next day. So let's use it. Until next time, namaste.